Imagine spending like 8 months meticulously building this tiny world in a glass box.
Oh yeah, a huge investment of time.
Right. Pouring your money, your daily attention, your whole heart into it. And then you wake up one morning and realize that despite all your efforts, everything is just slowly collapsing.
It's a devastating feeling, honestly.
It really is. And today we are doing a deep dive into a single quiet journal entry that captures exactly that. It's this absolute devastation, but also the surprising pragmatic pivot of a dedicated aquarist.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating piece of text.
We are looking at a post simply titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 286, which was written by an enthusiast named Ang. And right away, I mean, that number in the parenthesis tells a story, doesn't it? Part 286.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it implies this immense history of trial, error, observation, documentation. You don't get to part 286 of a journal without having experienced, the full spectrum of frustration and triumph.
Yeah, the real highs and lows.
Exactly. The highs and lows that come with trying to sustain a living ecosystem. We are dropping right into the middle of a very long, very arduous journey here.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We're looking at the emotional toll of this hobby, how we pivot after a crushing failure, and how to find incredible beauty in the alternatives we're forced to choose.
It's a really powerful theme.
And for you listening, even if you have never owned a fish tank in your life, this absolutely applies to you. If you have ever poured your soul into a passion project, hit a massive roadblock, and, had to swallow your pride to find a creative workaround.
Which we all have.
Exactly. Then the psychology in the short text is going to feel incredibly familiar.
Yeah, it's really the universal experience of confronting our own lack of control. When you curate a miniature ecosystem, you are fundamentally trying to orchestrate nature.
Which is basically impossible.
Right. And nature, as this text brilliantly illustrates, rarely follows the script you wrote for it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the catalyst for this specific journal entry is a major undeniable setback. It's this heartbreak that forces Ang to completely change course.
Yeah, the catalyst is really rough.
The entry begins by detailing an attempt to keep dwarf cichlids, specifically a type called apistogramma. And Ang kept these fish for nearly 8 months, starting with 3 pairs.
3 pairs, yeah.
But the text notes that they lost 2 of those pairs, leaving only 1 surviving pair. And Ang makes a point to specifically describe the apistogramma with one really painful word. They call them expensive.
Oof. Yeah, that single word carries so much weight in this context.
It really does.
Because when you invest in something labeled expensive,
Yeah.
you aren't just paying for the physical item, or in this case, the living creature.
Right.
You are investing in an expectation of prestige, of success, of having something elevated.
Exactly. Losing 2/3 of your fish after 8 months of care is this harsh, brutal learning curve. It's like investing heavily in high-end professional photography gear.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. You take it out into the field and immediately shatter 2 of your absolute best, most expensive lenses. The sting is financial, obviously, but it's deeply personal, too.
I would actually argue it's more insidious than a shattered camera lens.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, a dropped lens is an immediate, singular accident. It happens, it's over. But losing 2 pairs of a living creature over an 8-month span.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that is a slow burn. That is 8 months of daily feeding, observing, tweaking the environment, hoping they thrive, and just watching them fail anyway.
That creeping realization that it's just not working.
Exactly. It's the realization that your husbandry, your ability to be a steward for this specific environment is failing. And the financial cost of the expensive fish just twists the knife.
Because it amplifies the feeling that you've wasted something highly valuable.
Precisely.
It makes you wonder how anyone comes back from that. I mean, it's the kind of defeat where most people would just drain the tank, unplug the filter, and list the glass box online.
Yeah, cut your losses and walk away.
But Ang doesn't quit. Because of that emotional and financial toll, Ang realizes they need a new path, which leads directly to a more accessible alternative.
A very practical shift.
Right. Enter the Kribensis Cichlid, or Pelvicachromis-Pulcher. Ang specifically calls this a great alternative, and notes that the Kribensis is more affordable, costing around MYR8 per fish.
This pivot is so fascinating because it represents a complete recalibration of their whole strategy.
Yeah.
The author is nursing a depleted budget and the psychological wear and tear of a slow 8-month failure. But instead of walking away, they use that failure as a boundary to safely explore something else.
So what does this all mean? Is this just a pragmatic financial decision or a necessary psychological reset for the hobbyist?
That's the big question.
Because when I see the phrase great alternative directly next to a low price tag, my mind immediately questions the motivation. Is it just a downgrade? Did Aang initially feel like they were settling for the cheap option because the prestigious option failed?
It's a completely rational question, but I actually think the text reveals something much deeper than just settling.
Okay, I'm listening.
Think about what that specific MYR8 price point does to the human brain. When you are dealing with expensive fish, you are operating under a state of constant anxiety.
Oh, sure. Every time they look at you funny, you panic.
Right. Every time the fish looks slightly sluggish, you are terrified of losing your investment. By dropping the financial stakes to MYR8, you remove the paralysis of perfection.
Oh, so it lowers the stakes enough that you can actually breathe?
Yes.
You can afford to learn and experiment without the crushing anxiety of another high-stakes failure.
Precisely. It's an aesthetic and psychological recalibration. The constraint of a depleted budget forces you to look at the bottom shelf, so to speak.
Yeah.
And what this journal entry illustrates so beautifully is that when you remove that blinding pressure of prestige, you actually free yourself to truly observe what is right in front of you.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when we look closer at the text, the visual descriptions Aang provides prove this isn't some cheap consolation prize.
No, not at all.
The Kribensis brings a completely different yet equally striking aesthetic to the tank. Aang contrasts the two fish directly.
Yeah, the visual comparison is great.
The expensive previous fish, the Apistogramma, are known for their vibrant colors and stripes. But the new, affordable fish, the Kribensis, are described as having rainbow coloration, specific dark spots, ocelli, on the caudal fins, and an intense magenta or deep red belly, especially on the females.
The transition in the language there is just remarkable.
It really is.
We move from a very broad general description of the old fish, vibrant colors and stripes, to this hyper-specific anatomical mapping of the new fish.
Yeah, pointing out the specific fins.
Aang is literally looking at the caudal fins, noting the ocelli.
It's like moving from a stark, striped, modern art piece that demands your attention from across the room to this incredibly detailed, pointillist rainbow painting.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it.
You have to lean in to see those distinct eye spots on the tail and that intense magenta belly.
And notice the distinction Aang makes about the females, especially on the females.
Right.
That tells us something critical about the hobbyist's mindset at this stage. Aang isn't just staring blankly at a school of fish anymore.
No, they're really studying them.
Aang is identifying sexual dimorphism. They are tracking the visual differences between individuals in that tank. It demonstrates a deep, mindful observation that goes far beyond just maintaining water in a glass box.
You definitely can't notice the precise shade of magenta on a specific female's belly if you are just tossing food in and walking away.
Exactly.
It requires you to sit still, to watch, and to actively categorize the ecosystem you're managing.
Which brings us back to the psychological benefit of that MYR8 price tag.
The lower stakes.
Right. Because they aren't terrified of losing an expensive investment, the author can sit back and just appreciate the intricate beauty of the creature. They discover that affordability does not equate to a lack of complexity.
But that ability to sit back and observe is seriously put to the test in this text.
Oh, for sure.
Because despite this bright, flamboyant appearance, the rainbow colors, the intense magenta bellies, the eye spots, Aang notes that their behavior is surprisingly understated.
Yeah, a real contradiction.
There is this massive, fascinating contrast between how they look and how they act. The entry says the Kribensis are relatively shy compared to the bold Apistogramma.
And that shyness isn't just a temporary reaction to being moved to a new home.
Right, and explicitly writes that even after a full month of acclimating to the aquarium tanks, these fish are still relatively shy.
A whole month?
A whole month in the tank, and they are still hiding. I have to be honest, that requires a staggering amount of patience from the owner.
It really does.
It defies our human expectations of how a transaction like this should work. It's completely paradoxical. It's like inviting a flamboyantly dressed guest to a party.
Okay, I love this analogy.
Someone wearing like a custom-tailored, intense magenta outfit with rainbow accessories, who then walks in and spends the entire evening hiding behind the living room curtains.
Yeah.
You naturally assume that an animal with rainbow coloration evolved to show off.
What's fascinating here is that disconnect between our perception of of bold physical appearance and the reality of their behavioral disposition.
We just project our own stuff onto them.
Exactly. We see bright colors, and we project a human idea of extroversion onto the animal.
Yeah.
But the fish isn't colored that way for our entertainment.
Right.
That intense magenta belly on the female isn't a billboard for the aquarist. It's a deeply specific signal meant for another fish in its ecosystem.
So the aquarist is forced to realize they're just a spectator, not the main character of this glass box.
That is the crux of it. We buy the fish, we curate the tank, and we subconsciously feel that nature owes us a performance.
Like we bought tickets to a show.
Yes. But cultivating a living ecosystem operates strictly on nature's timeline, not the hobbyist schedule. That month-long wait, staring into a tank where the colorful fish are hiding away, requires a profound submission to a pace that you simply do not control.
Which is incredibly hard for us to accept. We want results. We want the ecosystem we paid for, even if it was only MYR8, to validate our efforts by swimming up to the glass.
But the text shows us how an experienced aquarist handles that lack of control. Aang doesn't complain about the shyness as a flaw.
No, they don't.
Instead, Aang looks for a structural solution.
Yes, and this shifts the entire tone of the journal entry as we look toward the future. Because the fish are so persistently shy, Aang realizes that passively waiting isn't going to work.
Something has to change.
The environment itself has to change to draw out their natural behaviors. Aang writes that the current plan is to actively set up more breeding grounds. And the stated goal of this is to identify bonded pairs, which Aang admits they are still trying to figure out. The entry wraps up with this very forward-looking, optimistic note. Let's see how this goes in the coming weeks.
It's a remarkable pivot from where this journal entry started.
But hold on, I have to push back on the actual mechanics of this plan.
Okay, go for it.
Identifying bonded pairs among fish that won't even come out of hiding. That sounds like trying to play matchmaker in an underwater soap opera where you can't even see the actors.
It does sound counterintuitive.
How does setting up a breeding ground actually coax these extremely shy fish into revealing who they've bonded with?
Well, you have to look at it through the lens of environmental architecture.
Okay.
If a fish is shy for an entire month, it means it feels fundamentally exposed. The human instinct is often to remove hiding spots, to force the animal out into the open so we can see it.
Right, take away the plants so they have to swim up front.
Exactly. But Aang does the exact opposite.
By adding more breeding grounds, they are adding more places to hide.
Exactly. But it's a specific kind of hiding place. Let's use an analogy.
I love analogies.
Imagine trying to get people to mingle and form deep conversations at a party held in an empty, echoing gymnasium under harsh fluorescent lights.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Right. Everyone is going to hug the walls and feel incredibly awkward. They are exposed. Now, take those same people and put them in a dimly lit room with comfortable enclosed booths and soft music.
The architecture dictates the social behavior.
Precisely. So in this context, a breeding ground provides a defensible territory.
So the breeding grounds are the comfortable booths.
Yes. You aren't coaxing them out by making them brave. You're providing them with the structural security they need to feel safe enough to engage in their natural pairing behaviors.
That makes so much sense.
Once they claim a territory, they will start defending it, interacting with each other, and exhibiting those bonded behaviors Aang is looking for.
Ah, so you give them the right environment to be themselves, even if being themselves initially means claiming a specific hitter spot together? You have to build the infrastructure of security before you can observe the behavior.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights the incredible resilience of this hobbyist. Think about the emotional arc of this single entry.
It's quite a ride.
It really is. It began with a slow, creeping failure of losing 2 pairs of expensive apistogramma over 8 long months.
Yeah.
It moved into a financial constraint, which led to the discovery of the MYR8 Kribensis. Then came the month of waiting, staring at a tank, trying to catch a glimpse of a shy, rainbow-colored fish.
And despite all of that, the loss, the waiting, the hiding Aang isn't dwelling on the past.
Not at all.
They are actively gathering materials to build breeding grounds. They're looking for bonded pairs that they can't even clearly see yet.
It is an act of radical optimism. You're literally building a nursery for a future you hope to observe.
Wow.
You adjust the parameters, you provide the architecture, and you trust that life will eventually adapt to the space you've created.
It really is quite a profound journey contained within just a few short paragraphs of a journal entry. Let's recap the arc Ang has taken us on today.
Let's do it.
We started with that crushing, expensive heartbreak of the epistogramma, a harsh reminder of the emotional toll and the incredibly steep learning curve required when you take responsibility for a living ecosystem.
Which forced that beautiful pragmatic pivot. Driven by constraint, Ang discovered the Kribensis Cichlid.
Yes.
It was an aesthetic recalibration that proved a lower price tag doesn't mean a compromise in complexity or beauty.
Right, trading the obvious prestige of vibrant stripes for those nuanced, pointillist rainbow hues, the distinct ocelli eye spots on the fins, and that intense magenta belly on the females.
A visual payoff that you only get if you are willing to truly, deeply observe.
And we explored the paradox of their behavior, that striking contrast between their flamboyant, colorful appearance and their persistent shyness, even after a full month of acclimation.
It's a powerful lesson in how nature refuses to operate on a human schedule.
Which requires patience and ultimately proactive optimism. Ang isn't giving up. Ang is building the architecture for those fish to feel safe, setting up breeding grounds, playing that underwater matchmaker, and just waiting to see what unfolds in the weeks to come.
It's a wonderful reminder for anyone listening. Sometimes our original plans, the expensive, highly anticipated, prestigious ones, they just slowly fall apart.
Yeah, they do.
But if we can weather the disappointment and let go of our expectations, there are incredible alternatives waiting for us. Alternatives that might be quieter or require a lot more patience, but are intricately, deeply rewarding if we just pay attention.
I think that is the perfect note to leave this on. The hidden value of the alternative, the necessity of patience, and the resilience to keep building the infrastructure for a better tomorrow.
Couldn't have said better.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over as you step away from this deep dive. When we curate a miniature world like an aquarium, managing the costs, carefully constructing the breeding grounds, and patiently observing the shy inhabitants, are we really the ones shaping nature, or is nature quietly, persistently teaching us how to adapt our own expectations to its pace?